Welcome back, RPG fans, to Optional Dungeon, the Tokyo Game Show special. But believe it or not, we still have to discuss about our weekly challenges and games we've been playing recently. So, who shall go first, good sir?
You can go ahead. Let's hear what you have been playing.
Alrighty, first up, I'll talk about the weekly challenge, which of course was Torneko no Daiboken Fushigi no Dungeon, which pretty much means Toneko's Mystery Dungeon. And this was a very unusual game made in 1993 because it's made by Chunsoft, that's known for the legendary Shire and the Wanderer series. And actually playing Shire and the Wanderer on the DS and then playing no Daiboken, they are very much similar. They're both roguelites, but just the music and the art style is very much the same, and so should it be because Koichi Sugiyama actually does music for the Dragon Quest series, but he also does music for the Shire and the Wanderer series. So that's why the games feel so familiar. So if you actually are a fan of Shire and the Wanderer, you should be right at home with Toneko no Daiboken. And one of the reasons I'm very interested in it is because back in 1993, even then, the Dragon Quest series was very popular. And just after, before, I should say, before Toneko no Daiboken was Dragon Quest V, and that garnered a lot of acclaim. But before that, on the Famicom was Dragon Quest IV, and Toneko was a much beloved character, so much that fans requested he be in another game. So Chunsoft made this, his mystery dungeon game. Now, unfortunately, I played this game blind. It was in complete Japanese, and I had a hard time understanding it. But I played my share of roguelites, so I pretty much navigated around, the dungeon. Basically, how it works in roguelikes is you've got the dungeon, and it's multi floors, and it's a grid system where you make a move, your enemy makes a move, and in the selected rooms you pick up items. Some might be cursed, some might be more powerful, and basically that's how you get your items. As you pick them up, you get them out. I'm not too sure if you get them out of chest. I'm just going back to old roguelike games. I'm just used to it. But in Toneko no Daiboken, you pick them off the ground, and you get levels when killing enemies. However, with roguelikes, there is a price to pay if you die. You lose all your money, all your items, and you lose all your levels. You go back to stage one. And because it's in kanji, I don't know of any safe way to procure anything that you get. So I only got thing to the sixth floor and got my ass handed to me. And because I couldn't understand it, there wasn't really any desire to continue on. However, as far as roguelikes go, it's not bad. I just wish I could understand it, and then I would probably play it more. So that's pretty much just from my experience of this weekly challenge. So yeah, basically, I've been playing a lot of other games as well. And being in the Falcon mood lately, I decided to play one of the old Dragon Slayer games, which of course the Legend of Heroes series is part of the Dragon Slayer franchise. And I play Dragon Slayer 3, which is known as Dragon Slayer Junior Romancia. And Romancia is a side-scrolling, I thought it was an RPG, but it's not. However, it has some RPG elements. But you play as this hero and you have to save a princess. It's very simple, but it is a Famicom game, which is of course means NES in Japanese. And there's a term I like to throw around with Ero that's called Famicom hard, referencing to how hard games were in the 80s. And this game is no exception. The first time I played it, I didn't even get past the first screen. It was that brutal because life is very there's not much of it. You get hit. You get like you go to the start of the game, you go to old man. He gives you life, which is weird. It's an old game, so why not? And basically, within a couple steps, I had about 20 enemies gang up, and boom, dead. So I had to basically replay it to retrace my steps, figure out what I need to do, and I figured out you need to kill enemies in order to get this orb that opens up a door. However, one of the most annoying things about that game is there is no jump button. To jump, you have to press up, and that is wrong. I know that old school games did that, but it doesn't sit well with me, and adds to the difficulty that's already a difficult game. So I did the best I could, and I got to the next town. I beat the first boss and got to the next town. However, the game suffered from a game-breaking glitch, and I couldn't talk to the person I needed to continue on with the game. That was my experience with Romancia right there. So, strike two. So I went on to my third game, and you know what? I've already played this, and the reason I've played this is you might have just already heard in another segment. I'm excited for East 4. So the first thing I did is I booted up East 4 Mask of the Sun on the Super Nintendo, and that I can play, you know, and it's still very challenging, but I've already beaten it once, but I'm enjoying it again. So much. I played a couple hours today. It's a very short game, like other East games. I think it only goes for about 7 to 8 hours, and but still, it's a really good version of East 4. I like Dawn of East better, but I like East 4. Mask of the Sun. It's still a great game. So that's pretty much what I've been playing RPG wise. I've actually been playing a lot of non RPG games as well, like Mega Man The Wily Wars, and the game I like to play nearly every year, once a year, because it's just my Mario, which is Wonder Boy and Monster Land. That's a game I just constantly play on and off whenever I can, because that's one of my favorite games from my childhood that got me into video games, so I like to play it whenever I can. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So how about you, Ero? What you been playing?
Well, I've been playing quite a lot of games, with my 3 to 4 hours train ride, every day. I've been playing a lot of games. I was sick for a couple of days, sadly, and I've been playing a lot of games, and even so much so that, last weekly challenge I already forgot to talk about a few games. So, you got a few hours? No, I'm
Oh
just
dear.
kidding around. Let's see. First thing that I really want to mention is that I've been playing and finished both Parasite Eve games on the PlayStation 1, which was interesting, to say the least. I really, really enjoyed the first Parasite Eve game. It was everything that I expected it to be, great story, really mystery based storyline where I really wanted to know what was happening. That, the storyline tied into our main character, Ayabria. Gameplay was really nice as well. It's kind of this you know uh, shooter type with RPG elements. You walk up to a random encounter. You fight these enemies on a grid, and you have to dodge. It's kind of an action RPG with a active time battle system worked in, and it's basically like Fallout 3 and stuff. And Vagrant Story, it pauses the gameplay to target which parts of an enemy. And the game is pretty short. I think I beat it in about 7 to 8 hours, pretty much 2.5 days on the train, and it was a very very enjoyable experience for sure. So I really enjoyed it. I did not play through the entire Chrysler building, which is, as you might have guessed it, a optional dungeon, which pretty much continues the story and changed the ending. I haven't played through the Chrysler dungeon. I checked out, the ending on online, and it adds and rewards you if you play through the Chrysler dungeon. So, small cop out for me there, but I really wanted to move on because it's pretty much an 100 floor, just fighting and fighting, and I wasn't really that high level. But
Always fun.
oh yeah, definitely. I really wanted to continue on and play through Parasite Eve 2 as well. And for Parasite Eve 2, I have to say, and I really did not enjoy it as much as the first game. Pretty much based on the fact that the story is completely, it's an interesting story, sure, but it takes very, very long to pick off, and it is almost not tied to our main characters. Only so in the final 2 hours or so when there's this plot development which changes it up. But overall, it was a separate story. Aya Bria moved down from New York all the way to Los Angeles 3 years later, and there weren't a lot of other characters besides Aya Bria, and the gameplay took a hit. It was more action packed this time around. It was more like running around, aim and shoot instead of just pause the gameplay, check out the targets. It didn't have as much strategy and tactics involved. In the first game, a lot of the boss battles were really dodge heavy, and you had to work their attack patterns and stuff, and some trial and error. But the second game was more like work hard and grind on your weapons, and have the right ammo, conserve your ammo, and then you can just breeze through the game. It was more a Resident Evil type game. And while it was an interesting game, once again, 6 to 8 hours long, I didn't feel that much enjoyment out of it as I did with the first game. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, and the story was a little bit out there, and that's saying much for a Parasite Eve game. So it's kind of got me in the mood where I am interested to start playing the third birthday on the PSP, but at the same time, it also doesn't, really want to get to third birthday because I'm expecting more Parasite Eve 2 than Parasite Eve 1. But Greg, I'm interested to see. Have you played any of the Parasite Eve games?
None,
Oh yeah,
not one.
I see.
And because I'm in the same, me and Aero are in the PAL region, and we only got Parasite Eve 2, but we did get the third birthday. We never got Parasite Eve 1. That was only released in Japan and America, and that was it.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. That's the same thing. I had to pick up a copy of Parasite Eve 2, back when it was released in PAL copies, but I never gave it a try because I wanted to play the first game first. But by all means, if you're ever interested in a sort of survival horror RPG, uh, Parasite Eve is probably the best pick for that. It's a really really good game. But the second and the perhaps even the third game, it's became too much action based, and that's sad to see. But overall, I enjoyed my time with especially the Parasite Eve game, and it's great to kind of scratch off two games of my huge backlog, and especially in terms of Squaresoft games. And it makes me a little bit more of a Squaresoft specialist to be able to play through these games. But that's not all that I've been playing. You know, I know I've talked to everybody and said, I will be playing a lot of Xenoblade Chronicles, but sadly, there was one game occupying most of my time, and that was Skies of Arcadia Legends on the GameCube. That game was really, really addictive. I really enjoyed the style. You play as these two teenage sky pirates, and it felt to me like a hybrid between One Piece, the pirate anime, combined with Legend of Hero Trails in the Sky, which also has two teenage characters on a epic journey, combined later on with Suikoden in the sense that you have to recruit your entire pirate army. And I just really, really enjoyed my time with Skies of Arcadia. It was a pretty lengthy game, which sucked up most of my console time and
Yep.
weekends. I beat it in about, I believe, 30, 35 hours. I haven't done any optional stuff. I just finished the story, but epic gameplay. A lot of turn-based, which the turn-based battles were, a little bit cliched. Nothing really special there. You have this bar which is for the entire party, and they use basically all their magic attacks and stuff on that. But there are some really epic turn-based aerial battles between ships as well as these mythical creatures that got resurrected during the game that you had to destroy. Really, really fun story. Um, and I just really enjoyed the charming aspects of Skies of Arcadia. Skies of Arcadia was, of course, a game released on the Dreamcast by Sega Overworks, and then it got released on the GameCube in the form of Skies of Arcadia Legends. And the main characters, Vice and Aika, they were playable in the wonderful and still one of my favorite PlayStation 3 game, Valkyria Chronicles. So I knew about the characters already, and Skies of Arcadia is a wonderful, charming RPG that it's hard to find. It's pretty expensive, but it is a great and unique and really charming and fun RPG to play. And I'm really happy to have played it. And it's definitely by far one of, if not my favorite RPG on the Dreamcast. Have you played Skies of Arcadia, Greg?
Yes, it was one of the rarest games in PAL format, and by chance one year, and this was going back, I think about 2005, I found a copy and I got it. and I played the shit out of it. And of course one of the things was it was by Sega. It was probably the only game on the Dreamcast I wanted to play, but I was such a big fan at the time of the GameCube. I loved my GameCube. Anything that came out on that take precedence over anything. So when Skies of Acadia finally came out, when it first came out, I couldn't get it. It was just impossible to track down a copy. But a year later, when I got my hands on it, I snapped it up straight away, and I absolutely love it. I love the characters I like Vice and Ica, and just probably one of my favorite villains is Ramirez. So awesome! Every time you'd fight him, would be a spectacle of the ears and the eyes. He's just such a great character.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but I just really like Skies of Arcadia. It just basically back then just gave me hope that Sega could still make a great RPG. Back when I thought that their days were numbered, it gave me hope still. But like I said, they're a weird company. They'll create a new IP that when it basically begins, it's just so fantastic and so original. But when the sequels keep piling on, they just find it really hard to keep it alive and just send it to either to the grave or to become something it's not in the case of Phantasy Star and Shining Force series. But with the Valkyria Chronicles series, it's still going strong. It's still tying to its roots, and I hope it does, even though unfortunately 3 has not been announced for an English release, which unfortunately is not fantastic at all. And even though they just announced the additional version of Valkyria Chronicles 3 with more additional content. And I definitely know this stuff because not just myself, but my entire family is fanatical about Valkyria Chronicles. So we're always on the ball with all this information, but I just hope Sega delves back into it. And I know that they also wanted, one stage or another, wanted to put Dreamcast games for the PlayStation Network and the Xbox Live feature. For the love of me, do not know why they haven't put Skies of Acadia on there yet. Just just boggles me. Is it because the game's 2 discs? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's a great game, and it's pretty much loved. It's one of the hidden gems on the Dreamcast and the GameCube, and definitely give it a try if
definitely.
you find it for a reasonable price. But that's not all that. But that's not all that I've been playing. I recently talked about the fact that I've been playing the original Final Fantasy Legend trilogy, the first three Saga games on the Game Boy. They were about 6 to 8, and one was even 10 hours long, and I pretty much finished all three of them in a week and a half on my way to work. Very interesting gameplay, especially the first two games where you will basically build your entire party. You can pick between humans, espers, monsters, and they all level up in each own individual way. Humans level up by just fighting enemies, and monsters level up by eating meat, as well as espers, they gain abilities by using abilities and such. And they're interesting games, especially the second game was definitely one of my favorites, which has been subsequently remade for the DS, and that's been fan translated. So I'm going to check that out, maybe next year or so. But the third Final Fantasy Legend game was really not that interesting to me. I was kind of done with it, based on the fact that I've been rushing through the entire trilogy as well as Final Fantasy Adventure in a short time. But the third game didn't offer you that much of a variety in terms of the party, and pretty much set your characters up. That was a little bit disappointing, and the story wasn't as gripping as well. So, the first two games were a lot of fun for the Game Boy, but the third game was really not that, interesting to me, and I kind of struggled with that. But it's a short game, so I persevered. But interesting games, and I'm really looking forward to playing more of the Saga series. But that's about all of the games that I've been playing. Last week we had the Kingdom Hearts episode, and I mentioned there that I finished Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. I finally finished all three scenarios, as well as the final ending and the final scenario, and it's by far one of my favorite PSP games. Once again, together with Trails in the Sky, Crisis Core, and the East games. Highly recommend everybody to check out Birth by Sleep. I have been playing more of 358 days, 358 over 2 days, but I felt kind of burned out on Kingdom Hearts, and I haven't continued it yet. I'm pretty much about 12 hours in, and I think it's an interesting game, but there are a lot of in my opinion, side missions that don't really contribute that much to the overall plot, and that's kind of disappointing. I'm kind of wondering whether or not I should give up on the game and just check, online, perhaps some cutscenes and endings. But uh, I have to research how much more hours I have to put in. If it's under 10 hours, I'll just beat it, next upcoming week. And then I have to move on to Recoded as well, which I'm still about 4 to 5 hours in. But the biggest game that I want to talk about for now is a game that was on my list for years, just for years on end. It's pretty much, I've been working very diligently on all the games in the Final Fantasy series. I love Final Fantasy ever since, 7, 8, and 9, moving on to the PlayStation 2. And pretty much since then, I've been working on the sequels, individual games, especially the first 6 games. Each year I've been playing, and then I played part 4 and then 6. And for the launch of Final Fantasy 13, I really wanted to replay both Final Fantasy 12, which at that time I only finished one, so I did that, as well as play through Final Fantasy 1 and 2, which left me with only one game to play, and that is Final Fantasy 5. And the most recent port of Final Fantasy 5 was Final Fantasy 5 Advance, and I played that game for pretty much 4 to 5 hours after I beat 13. And I recently wanted to go back to it on the Game Boy Advance, but sadly, the battery of my game died out. So really, really sad to see. So I had to check out and play it on the PSP, uh, you know, and enjoy it that way. And all I can say is I've played through it the last week and a half for pretty much 22 hours, and it has not disappointed me by a long shot. So yeah, Final Fantasy V is definitely my favorite in that type of four warriors of light, crystal saving type of gameplay. Especially we have Final Fantasy 1, 3, and 5 that really use that type of storytelling. And the reason why I enjoy it so much is that this time around it has the best character development. We have our main character Bartz, and he is joined by Princess Lena, as well as the pirate Ferris, and also the amnesia old guy called Galuf. And not everything as it seems, and that's definitely addressed later on with some great character development, especially in the third segment. But what I like most about Final Fantasy V is it has 3 different worlds to explore, which is always really nice. We have pretty much Final Fantasy VI had 2 worlds, and Final Fantasy IV also had multiple worlds, an underground and a moon. And I really like that type of playstyle. And it's been a while since I played any of the previous 6 games, pretty much a year and a half. And Final Fantasy V really did everything right to me. And I'm not the biggest fan of the job system, which Final Fantasy V is probably the biggest and best implementation of the job system. It has so many different jobs, really obscure ones as well. But it was a great game. There were some really heavy grind spots where it takes a while to grind for your specific abilities to combine the best jobs, because if you reach a specific level with your job you get the ability. So say you use a lot of white mage, you get the ability called white. And if you then take a different job, you get the monk, which is a very attack heavy job, and you can select the white magic ability as well, and then you can kind of have a monk which is able to use white magic. And especially in the later parts of the game it is a must to pretty much build your party up specifically. So basically what I did is I had a thief that used summon spells, which was my main character, and then we had a ninja that used black magic. We had a monk that was able to use white magic, and then finally I had a samurai that was able, he kind of was samurai and dragoon, that was able to use blue magic, because blue magic, if especially Final Fantasy VII fans out there, with the enemy skill materia, blue magic can be really devastating if you work on getting those skills diligently. And it's a fantastic game. I just loved everything about it. You know, it's a great Final Fantasy game. I was really, you know, with the expectations and it being the last Final Fantasy game, I was kind of hoping, I was kind of thinking that it was going to disappoint me and that I wouldn't like it as much. But it is a real surprise, and I have to see where it fits in on my ranking. But it's definitely not at the lower bottom where I have games like Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 10-2, and Final Fantasy 12. It's really up there, you know, with the better games. It's kind of in between the middle, you know. But I really had a blast playing through Final Fantasy 5. I didn't really do any of the optional dungeons at the end. I did beat one of the two hardest bosses were Omega and Shinryu, with a lot of evil gil tossing because you know it's really up close at the end, and I really didn't need any gil anymore. So just you know gil tossed their asses. So which is wrong, but
But
uh,
so right.
but so right in the meanwhile, yeah, it's absolutely you know to just obliterate them, but. It's pretty much the same, you know. In one of my Final Fantasy 8 playthroughs, I beat Omega Weapon just by, you know, using the end from selfies. So hey, uh, anything, and by any means possible, just beat them. You know, as long as they go
I,
down. Go ahead.
I'm guilty with your Jimbo and 10. I fed him a shit ton of gil to kill the Dark Aeon, so
Oh, I did that
I'm
as
guilty.
well. Oh, even there was some very evil story about that. Is I even beat Penance, the ultimate boss. I just you know had a backup save and just rushed through all the Dark Aeons with Yojimbo. I paid Yojimbo with Yuna's overlimit 1 gil, and he did Sanmado on Penance, and I laughed my ass off when it happened. Really, really epic. But
Uh,
yeah, it's Final Fantasy 5. I'm really happy to finally beat it. You know, now I can move on to Final Fantasy 4, the After Years, which is not technically a numbered game, but it fits in the numbered series. So I really enjoyed my time in Final Fantasy 5, and it's a really liberating feeling to finally finish one through even 14 because I don't touch 11 and 14. For me, those are 10-2 and 13-2 when it comes out. So that's all the games that I've been playing. And in terms of weekly challenge, I will have to pick E7, which I mentioned before. I recently started playing it, so it's going to be on my train to work. And I think that about wraps up this podcast. If not for some announcements, so Greg, please tell us all about it.
Now, as you might as well, I haven't picked a weekly challenge, and that's because I've actually got some things happening. Number one, after the day of this recording, I'm actually going to be packing because I'm going to be moving house. And I'll get into that on my channels in a later date, what's happening with that. But I'm not going to be playing as many games. Two, there isn't a weekly challenge, it's just a challenge for myself because one game I have to play, I want to play, is Xenoblade. I actually want to sit down and play that. Now, the reason why I haven't been playing it as much is because I've come off Shining Force 3, this 100 hour plus epic. I basically want to take a break and do other things, which I have been doing. I've been playing games like an hour, a few hours a day. I haven't been like going headlong into an RPG, but if I will, it's going to be Xenoblade. So all this time, will be used to play Xenoblade, nothing else. So there won't be any weekly challenge. It's just the challenge of going to enjoy the experience of Xenoblade. However, the big announcement is during this recording, we've had some technical difficulties on my end, and the reason is my laptop's on the verge of death. I wish we'd say it has a glitch where the graphics card just buckles up, the screen just floods with ungodly pixels, freezes everything. That's it, and I have to reboot, and it's a pain in the ass where Arrow is recording the podcast, and it keeps happening to me. And today, of all days, it happened about more times than I can imagine. So I reckon the end is near for it. So at any point, it could just up and keel over. So just want to warn everyone about that. But even if it does or doesn't, the podcast will be taking a hiatus very soon, depending on how the podcast, my laptop holds up, we could be doing at least one more episode, and it is an episode I've been looking forward to. But the biggest announcement we want to talk about is a good friend of the podcast and of YouTube, which is Pete Dorr, has his forums, which is Pete's Game Room forums, and we've set up a Rpgibberish thread there. So if you want to go there, sign up, and talk to us about our episodes, or want to talk to us about RPGs, feel free to do so. It's fantastic. I've decided I'm going to use the forum as a means to tease the next episode. I'll be writing a cryptic message, and so all the listeners can guess on what the next episode will be about. But I just got to thank Arrow for starting it, and I've got to thank Pete for moving it into a better section that we can get more coverage. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thought it would be an interesting idea because I've been a user on the Pete's Gaming Forum for a while now, and I saw you as well. So I thought it would be an interesting idea to kind of have some, exposure for ourselves and have a place for everybody's talking. And it's definitely a great one. And but yeah, I think that about wraps up, this very lengthy optional dungeon with the TGS special and our double weekly challenge. Once again, I want to thank everybody for listening, and we have hit 250 subscribers, which is fantastic.
Woohoo!
Yeah, definitely, and keep supporting us, keep commenting, because that's definitely very interesting to see and talk about everybody. So again, big thanks to everybody who's been listening, and we hope you have enjoyed this wonderful episode. Greg, you got any closing words?
Yeah, East 4 and a new Suicune game. As I mentioned on my Facebook, best TGS ever. That pretty much sums it up. And yeah, as probably my final thoughts is, you know, the Vita. What can I say? Gotta get it.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me. I really want to get my hands on the Vita. So, it will happen in a couple of months. And until then, everybody enjoy some RPGs, and we'll be back sooner than you think.
See you guys. Basically, I've been playing a lot of other games as well. And being in the Falcon mood lately, I decided to play one of the old Dragon Slayer games, which of course the Legend of Heroes series is part of the Dragon Slayer franchise. And I played Dragon Slayer 3, which is known as Dragon Slayer Junior Romancia. And Romancia is a side-scrolling. I thought it was an RPG, but it's not. However, it has some RPG elements. But you play as this hero and you have to save a princess. It's very simple, but it is a Famicom game, which is of course means NES in Japanese. And there's a term I like to throw around with Eru that's called Famicom hard, referencing to how hard games were in the 80s. And this game is no exception. The first time I played it, I didn't even get past the first screen. It was that brutal because life is very there's not much of it. You get hit, you get like you go to the start of the game, you go to old man, he gives you life, which is welcome back RPG fans to Optional Dungeon, the Tokyo Game Show special. But believe it or not, we still have to discuss about our weekly challenges and games we've been playing recently. So, who shall go first, good sir?
You can go ahead. Let's hear what you have been playing.
Alrighty, first up, I'll talk about the weekly challenge, which of course was Toneko no Daiboken Fushigi no Dungeon, which pretty much means Toneko's Mystery Dungeon. And this was a very unusual game made in 1993 because it's made by Chunsoft, that's known for the legendary Shire and the Wanderer series. And actually playing Shire and the Wanderer on the DS and then playing no Daiboken, they are very much similar. They're both roguelites, but just the music and the art style is very much the same, and so should it be because Koichi Sugiyama actually does music for the Dragon Quest series, but he also does music for the Shire and the Wanderer series. So that's why the games feel so familiar. So if you actually are a fan of Shire and the Wanderer, you should be right at home with Toneko no Daiboken. And one of the reasons I'm very interested in it is because back in 1993, even then, the Dragon Quest series was very popular. And just after before I should say before Toneko no Daiboken was Dragon Quest V, and that garnered a lot of acclaim. But before that, on the Famicom was Dragon Quest IV, and Toneko was a much beloved character, so much that fans requested he be in another game. So Chunsoft made this, his mystery dungeon game. Now, unfortunately, I played this game blind. It was in complete Japanese, and I had a hard time understanding it. But I played my share of roguelites, so I pretty much navigated around, the dungeon. Basically, how it works in roguelikes is you've got the dungeon, and it's multi floors, and it's a grid system where you make a move, your enemy makes a move, and in the selected rooms you pick up items. Some might be cursed, some might be more powerful, and basically that's how you get your items. As you pick them up, you get them out. I'm not too sure if you get them out of chest. I'm just going back to old roguelike games. I'm just used to it. But in Tonoko no Daiboken, you pick them off the ground, and you get levels when killing enemies. However, with roguelikes, there is a price to pay if you die. You lose all your money, all your items, and you lose all your levels. You go back to stage one. And because it's in kanji, I don't know of any safe way to procure anything that you get. So I only got think to the sixth floor and got my ass handed to me. And because I couldn't understand it, there wasn't really any desire to continue on. However, as far as roguelikes go, it's not bad. I just wish I could understand it, and then I would probably play it more. So that's pretty much just for my experience of this weekly challenge. So yeah, weird. But, it's an old game, so why not? And basically, within a couple steps, I had about 20 enemies going up, and boom, dead. So I had to basically replay it to retrace my steps, figure out what I need to do, and I figured out you need to kill enemies in order to get this orb that opens up a door. However, one of the most annoying things about that game is there is no jump button. To jump, you have to press up, and that is wrong. I know that old school games did that, but it doesn't sit well with me, and adds to the difficulty that's already a difficult game. So I did the best I could, and I got to the next town. I beat the first boss and got to the next town. However, the game suffered from a game-breaking glitch, and I couldn't talk to the person I needed to continue on with the game. That was my experience with Romancia right there. So strike two. So I went on to my third game, and